All right, viewers, let's start with the top focus now. US-based Hrana rights group has stated that it had verified the deaths of 2,571 people during Iran's protests, including 2,403 protesters, 147 government-affiliated individuals, 12 people aged under 18 and 9 non-protester civilians. Meanwhile, according to reports, the US has asked its European allies for intelligence on potential targets in the event of a strike on Iran. Earlier yesterday, the White House held a National Security Council meeting chaired by Vice President J.D. Vance to prepare options for action on Iran for President Trump. Joining me now in this discussion is Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe, who is Middle East Affairs expert and joins us from Colombo. Thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. How do you see the death toll that the US group is saying is verified? It's very shocking that more than 2,500 people could be killed in a country that's saying nationwide protests, and the country itself has called on for hanging of a protester.
Precisely. That sounds absolutely tragic. And it's a clear indication that the regime is teetering on the edge. But we should not overestimate the fact that this protest will simply pave the path to the total eclipse of Iranian regime, as Iran is not something which we witnessed from Arab Spring. That is something we really need to understand as international observers. Yes, as you pointed out, it has increased more than 2,000 lives, and Iranian regime is putting its maximum effort to oppress the protest movement. And yesterday and day before yesterday, there were pro-regime, pro-Iranian, pro-Khamenei. The protest movements were rallying across the streets in Tehran and Isfahan, just to show that Iranian regime is still being protected, still being supported by a larger scale of people.
What is the action that we can now expect from US? Israel has also said it's on the watch. Trump has said that he's mulling action should more people be hanged. Should we expect some strikes now from US?
Well, strikes can be expected, as President Trump saying that keep protesting, help is on the way. But we should not forget the grand strategic narratives in which Iranian regime was based since the inception of Iranian theocracy in 1979. When you look at the governing structure of Iran, which consists of 3 layers. Firstly, it strictly opposes the United States and it tries to project itself as the leader of the Islamic world. Secondly, Iranian regime has been strictly supported by the activities of IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, as the backbone of the regime. And thirdly, Iran, since the very beginning, tried to promote regional alliances with Hezbollah and certain other the Shia fractions of the region. But with the deterioration of the economy and with the deterioration of its geopolitical influences for the past few years, that strategy seems to have been clearly undermined. But it has not yet come to the complete eclipse. So if Washington or Jerusalem are planning to see a sudden eclipse, a sudden collapse of Iranian regime with this protest movement, I don't think so that it is going to happen abruptly. Because as I clearly stated in my previous statement, Iran is not a country like Tunisia or Libya or Iraq. It's something completely different. Right? We should not forget that still a larger number of supporters are rallying around the Teheranian regime to support the theocracy. So, of course, as once Ernest Hemingway stated, the totalitarian regimes are dying. They would definitely collapse, but not randomly. Most of the authoritative states would die inevitably, but in a gradual process. I'm pretty sure the trajectory will happen to Iranian regime as well.
But Khomeini had also said that should US act or launch strikes, it is prepared to retaliate. What then should be the imminent scenario?
Well, it goes without saying that if Americans enter the region, definitely American actions will be followed by its counterpart, Israel. But we also saw what happened after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Iranians did not retaliate abruptly right after the funeral of Soleimani. They took a little bit of time, and that retaliation was not a harsh of a retaliation. It was not something pretty hard. Of course, they attacked US bases in Iraq, but the American casualties were not something much more detrimental, contrary to Iranian expectations. But simultaneously, also, if you look at the 12 days escalation between Iran and Israel last year, that proved the fact that to which extent Iranian regime is suffering from its economic chaos, because they could not even dominate their own aerial space. The Teheranian space, the Iranian sky was completely dominated by Israeli aircrafts. So I think this retaliation and seeking revenge, and these things do act as a point of deterrence from Iran's perspective, just to deter the enemy.
All right, sure. And what's next then for Khomeini? And who is the leader that can take over? Because clearly he's not been able to hold power.
Well, Khomeini has been supporting and training his son Mustafa, who is always standing as a shadowy figure in Iranian politics. But as I told you, Iranian theocracy is subject to decay, but not in an abrupt manner. So there will be a huge power vacuum. But also we should not overestimate by the fact that Iranian people will simply fall to the Shah in exile. It's not going to happen, right? So the theocracy has been supported consistently for past nearly, I think, 50 years, right? 45 years. So there is a strong, well-established continuity of support towards this theocracy. And imagine, in case if theocracy falls, there will be a great power vacuum. This vacuum might set another disastrous wave, as it happened in countries like Libya or maybe in Egypt after Hosni Mubarak, to deteriorate the whole Iranian geopolitical spectrum.
Sure, Dr. Amar Singh, thank you very much for your comments on the situation in Iran. But do stay on with me as we proceed to cover some more news and information. Viewers, Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, said opposition forces are ready to step in if the clerical regime collapses, urging US lawmakers to back measures that empower Iranians. Pahlavi said in an interview that dialogue with counterparts inside Iran is ongoing to prepare a transfer of power, stressing the need for support from free nations that stand on the right side of history. Let's listen in.
People are ready to step in. There's a counterpart outside that in a sort of hybrid system can help one another in that process. And I think the important thing is to be able to protect their identities to the very end so they're not prematurely exposed, which is why it's not so obvious that we can ask them to, show up and not be immediately endangered. So we have to be very careful about that. But we are constantly in dialogue with them, preparing that transfer. So as soon as this regime collapses, we can immediately engage those forces within.
And moving ahead, 4 civilians, including